You're listening to The Blunt Truth. Unscripted, uncensored, unwoke. Get ready to challenge everything.
Welcome to episode 15 of the Blunt Truth podcast. It's the second solo episode. The first was episode 3 about human trafficking. This one is, of course, episode 15 about loneliness. Now, I'll tell you a real quick preview. We are cooking up some really cool guest episodes. We got one on magic mushrooms that's covering some new angles you've never seen from the hundreds of podcast episodes about mushrooms. We've got one that's a beautiful testimony and story of a survivor of ritual abuse. Want to bring that to you. And we are working on an episode about human souls and animal souls that is unlike any other religion or ideology out there. With that being said, I am here by myself to talk about loneliness. This episode is not planned. Just on a personal level, my story and my life experience has been dramatically marked by chronic loneliness and pretty severe loneliness as well. And before I dive into the story of my life and me, I want to share the core message I'll be getting at is loneliness is two things. One, loneliness is an epidemic. It is a manufactured epidemic. And secondly, we are meant to be interdependent, which is that healthy balance between codependency and chronic loneliness. So we'll touch on that as well. Now, I have hearing loss. It was genetic. I was born with it. By the way, when they say genetic, that's a Luciferian inversion. Anything that mainstream authorities label genetic is malleable. It's changeable. You can use your thoughts and your environment to completely change that thing so your kids won't have it. And the Luciferians invert this truth and use genetic to imply that it's somehow set in stone, despite countless epigenetic research proving that's not what genetic means. So I was deaf, almost deaf, up until second grade. And I'll say not being able to hear while I learned to listen, like while my brain learned to neurologically put words together, gave me severe auditory dyslexia. And I typically just tell people I have a hearing loss, but the bigger issue is that when you speak, I very much struggle to separate the words out from each other. It all just sounds like a nonstop stream. And this relates to loneliness because, for one, it took my parents 7 years to realize I was almost deaf. Because I was so smart and observant and aware, they thought I had selective hearing and was just ignoring. So there's a level of loneliness that happens when both parents have to work, when both parents are dealing with bills, and all these matrix institutions that suck their time and energy away from parenting, to where so many of us come into a lonely world because the parents are not physically available, or worse, emotionally available when they are physically present. In fact, I think the real reason for my hearing loss, as well as the hearing loss on both sides of my family, is that the men have anger issues and yell at their pregnant spouses. And the father yelling and shouting and abusing the mother causes the hearing to diminish. It's a trauma response. Because when I feel connected to someone, I can understand them. The auditory dyslexia goes away and I can very easily hear. Anyway, it was also lonely in public school, public education. In addition to not being able to hear, I went to North Glen Elementary School until 4th grade. And it's a mixed race, predominantly black school. Also a lot of Latina children. And so I went from there, then my mom died, which, by the way, she was terminally ill when I was 4 up until age 8.5. So that's isolating too. Not many other children are dealing with their mother departing this world over a period of years while they go to public education. So she passed and I moved. Yeah. Now, obviously, I'm a little bit fringe and unique and nerdy. So Suffice to say, I didn't really have it easy at North Glen. Then my mom passed and we moved, you know. That being said, I did start to fit in. I did start to play basketball, got really into hip hop music, was really into supporting the b-boy dancers that were into Rough Riders at the time. I was just starting to kind of find that groove. Age 8, very different than my house life. Then I went to Severna Park when my mom passed, which is almost exclusively white. It's really a town that has a very high percentage of inverted cult families and high-ranking military intelligence people. There's a lot of sick stuff normalized in Severna Park, and we'll get to that in later episodes. Way later. We got some dirt to clean up far away from home first. We'll get there. So, it was lonely at both schools because I never quite fit in. Plus, I was deaf, nearly. Because even though I had the hearing aids, number one, that's a target for being made fun of. More importantly, I struggled to understand. So I have to either have my teacher repeat things, have my friends repeat themselves, stare at people's lips to try and read their lips. I mean, I also stuttered horribly until into really junior year of high school. And I'll tell you, when it comes to loneliness, here's a light within the darkness. In high school, I realized I was dependent on cliques, and being seen with a particular group, I became aware that I only felt comfortable in high school if I was seen with a particular group. And I had this horrifying reaction to where I didn't like that, and I was committed to not being that way. And I dealt with this by spending an entire semester of high school completely by myself, sitting by myself on the bus, before classes, at lunch, you name it, intentionally. I would have a couple areas, benches and spots in the lobby. And the first 3-4 weeks of it were utterly uncomfortable. People stared. The normal groups I would be seen with didn't really ask any questions because I never had a main group. I would just float between different ones. So I didn't have a whole lot of social fallout. And then after week 4, week 5, towards the middle end of the semester, I really started getting into a groove with it and realized I don't actually want to go talk to anyone. Managing my image and watching others manage their image and watching others prioritize my opinion over their own comfort and their own inner peace was not appealing whatsoever compared to sitting by myself, thinking and observing. I was not expecting that, and it shifted me in a major way because that's kind of like finding beauty and solace at rock bottom or total social rejection or, the worst form of loneliness, right? Because high school is so social that I never ever again in my life felt scared of being rejected to the point where I wouldn't do something or I would avoid something. So loneliness can be a superpower, and I want to make that clear. It's not just a sob story. Later on, as I became spiritually awakened, I realized my ego hated the idea that I was hardwired for interdependency because I never had that supportive family life. I never even really had a healthy, supportive friend group and never fit into any group. No fraternities, no long-term career places, no long-term corporations that I worked for. As I was finding myself as a soul, as a true actualized spiritual being having a temporal material incarnation, all this resistance to tribe, all this resistance to healthy, secure friendships, all this resistance to deep needs and deep desires in a deep subconscious magnetic pull to be supported and be loved and just be practically and functionally interdependent with other people, have basic agreements with people that I'm close with, that I trust and see on a day-to-day basis. And my ego hated it so much. And it was because I feel embarrassed to admit this, one of the 2 times I can ever remember yelling at one of my girlfriends don't even recall the argument, but the notion of me needing her or needing the relationship came up, and I snapped. And she was on the bed, and I was standing in the bedroom, and I was just there yelling. I was like, I am a lone wolf. I don't need anyone. I've never needed anyone. Real nasty, real just toxic loneliness. That's the dark side of it. And at the same time, my father was all about codependency. His biggest fear was dying alone. His whole identity is based on the people around him. His whole worldview is based on himself. So I knew I didn't want that. And even in kindergarten, this is a weird story. I realized I was heterosexual in kindergarten. There was a little girl I was in class with me, and I just kept visualizing playing house with her, like being in a kitchen with her, talking like my parents talked. My parents had a healthy love. They weren't like yelling all the time, like, especially in the kitchen. They'd cook, they'd laugh. And so the happy part of my parents' relationship, when I went to kindergarten, I would see that for myself in this. And I did go to preschool too. So I went to 3-year-old preschool, 4-year-old preschool, and then 5-year-old kindergarten. So that same time, I had actually, along with that vision was this idea, I don't want to be like my dad, his bad side. I don't want to be angry and nasty and like tentacles of darkness clawing at the family, manipulation and this and that. So that manifested as really embracing and leaning into loneliness in the way that I did, Video games are a huge part of this since age 5 to today. I play video games my whole life. There's good side and downside of that, but they can foster loneliness. But the point of this story is that I had led a lonely life, had a big resistance to codependency, and so the balance between those, which is interdependence, right, which is physical interdependence, which is like sometimes you lend your neighbor flour and they lend you an egg. Sometimes you go and fix their well, and sometimes they come and fix your hydroelectric battery power. Emotional interdependence, which manifests most often as eating together, which is interesting. We'll do an episode on this, but I always eat alone to this day. I struggle to eat around people, and especially to eat with people, because that feasting is when we emotionally digest life together, share our life experience. It's a form of interdependence, mental interdependence, which I've always loved. Which helped me embrace interdependence is, of course, sharing intellectual ideas, connecting at that crown level, at that third eye level, connecting intellectually, and spiritual interdependence, which is a tapestry beyond my comprehension currently. We need to grow as souls. We need each other to keep evolving. Financial interdependence, resource interdependence, trading our skills, trading the things we've acquired, trading the resources we've acquired to grow together. So all of these things might produce different levels of resistance in you, but the point is, we are hardwired for interdependence. It's like feeling like you need to be perfectly healed before you deserve a partner, a spouse, a roommate, a neighbor that loves you and sees you and values you and cares about you. Well, as a mammal, as a primate, you are hardwired for warm skin-to-skin touch to soothe you. That's nothing to be ashamed about or suppress. It's a reality to navigate in the way that's right for you. I have dogs. I have animals. I snuggle with them. I sleep with them. I pet them when I'm, feeling wired and anxious. You are interdependent. Whether you struggle with codependence in some of these areas, and toxic loneliness in some of these areas, we are all finding that balance together. Hope this inspires you. Hope this helps you. Wishing you and yours a blessed rest of your week. Happy Wednesday. Happy day, whatever it is. Appreciate you. Appreciate your subscribing. Appreciate your reviewing. Guys, it's less than 3 months in, and we have got almost 20 unique listens a week rolling now. Well over 2 a day, which is really good because we're going to be doing hundreds and hundreds of episodes. So can you imagine how big this movement's going to be 3 years out, 5 years out? Subscribe to The Blunt Truth, drop a review, drop a rating. Your 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts help us reach so many more people. Your comments on Spotify help us reach so many more people. Your subscribes on YouTube, your comments on YouTube help the blunt truth reach so many more people. And it means the world, because this is not a money sink. We've been getting comments where people say, you must not be making money. You're damn right. I have been a business owner for more than 8 years and an entrepreneur for more than 15 years. Okay? I busted my butt to get to a place where I can dump money into the blunt truth. I can sink money into the blunt truth. Okay? To make an impact, to entertain you. You noticed I don't sell merch. I don't sell subscriptions. You have not heard a single advertisement. This will be a money sink for me forever. That's what it is. The blunt fucking truth. Thank you for your support.
Thanks for tuning in to The Blunt Truth with Stephen and Dougie. And enjoyed the conversation? Join us every Wednesday for more unfiltered discussions. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Your support keeps the truth coming. Elevate your journey. Connect with us on social media at blunttruthpodcast.com. Until next time, be kind, keep growing, and remember, knowledge is infinite.